Okay, today I just want to talk for a little while from the topic, embracing your superpower, embracing your superpower. And I'll be using the lectionary text for today, and that is coming out of Matthew, the 22nd chapter, the 15th through the 22nd verse. And if I haven't explained the lectionary for someone who's on here, that's a schedule in the Christian context of scriptures that are laid out on a 3-year cycle, so that there are people all around the world who are looking at the same text today. And so today we're looking at Matthew 22:15 through 22. And it says, "Then the Pharisees went and plotted to entrap him in what he said. So they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, 'Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with truth, and show deference to no one. For you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?' But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, 'Why do you put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin you use for the tax.' And they brought him the denarius. And then he said, 'Whose head is on this, and whose title?' And they answered, 'The emperor's.' Then he said to them, 'Therefore give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's.' When they heard this, they were amazed, and they left him and went away." Have you ever thought about superpowers? I'm not referring to countries. I'm referring to things like Superman can fly and has X-ray vision. Wonder Woman has strength and she's got her magic lasso. Black Panther has strength and a pretty cool suit. What superpower would you like to have? When I was a child, I wanted to fly like Superman. That's why when I got my PF flyers, I don't know if you remember them, but they made me think I could run fast and jump high, and I thought I'd be able to fly like Superman. But now my superpower that I would ask for or would want is different. If I could have a superpower, I'd want to see a bubble over people's heads, like in the cartoons. So I'd be able to see what people are really thinking. For example, I've been living in the South for over 20 years, 25 years, and I didn't realize it when I first got here, but I realize now that when people say, "Bless your heart," that's not necessarily a good thing. I was shocked when I realized that in some cases, "bless your heart" doesn't mean I mean you well, it means you dummy. And it took me a while to learn that. But I learned that lesson around the same time I learned the term nice nasty. You know, I'm married to a double threat when it comes to using words. Shauna was born and raised in the South, so there's that. Plus, she has a couple of degrees in English and a doctorate in education. She's a very kind and thoughtful person, but she can say words so nicely and calmly that you don't even realize she linguistically sliced you until you see the blood. Fortunately, she only uses her superpower for good, which is a blessing because, as Nathaniel Hawthorne said, words, so innocent and powerless as they are, as standing in a dictionary, how potent for good and evil they become in the hands of the one who knows how to combine them. The text for today tells us the story of a group of people who tried to use words as a form of entrapment. The text comes from the Gospel according to Matthew. Gospel was a term used by the early church for the good news of the saving acts of God through Jesus Christ. Although Matthew is listed as the first gospel in the New Testament, one of the sources that the scholars believe was used by Matthew was the book of Mark, which is actually really considered to be the first gospel. The other source that was used was thought to be the Q source, which includes sayings of Jesus. The interesting thing about Matthew, and probably the reason why it's listed first in the Bible, is it begins with a genealogy that provides a bridge between the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Gospel of Matthew seems to have been written for a relatively wealthy urban community, and it's thought that it was written around the year 90 of the Common Era, and it reflects the life and the concerns of a particular Christian community. It's a narrative written by an unknown author who was probably of a Jewish background who grew up in a Hellenistic city and spoke Greek. It includes the theme of conflict between kingdoms, the evil aspects of this present world and the kingdom or realm of God. That brings us to our text for today, where we find a group of Pharisees and Herodians going to Jesus to ask him a question in an attempt to entrap him. It's interesting that these two distinct groups coalesced around trying to take Jesus down. The Pharisees were religious leaders who believed the law consisted of the written law, the teaching of the prophets, and the oral traditions of the Jewish people. The Herodians, however, were a political group that supported the Roman leader King Herod Antipas, who reigned from around 4 BCE to 39 in the Common Era. The Herodians were in favor of submitting to Herod, therefore submitting to Rome, in exchange for political favor. This was a strange union of forces. These forces came together to maintain an evil status quo. They wanted the world to remain a place of inequality where the poor were exploited to the benefit of the rich, and where wealth was reserved for the few, and while the many struggled. They wanted a society where money and power ruled, but love and justice were disregarded. In our day, it would be like the coalitions of the conservative right-wing politicians joining forces with the conservative religious leaders, working together to establish and maintain an agenda where wealth and power and control keep the masses of people in check. Although many of those negatively impacted can't even see that that agenda doesn't even support them. Propaganda is difficult for some people to discern when it's presented in such a flashy production, and when people are paid to endorse a particular candidate. I was watching a political ad the other day, and all I could think of, you can put perfume and aftershave on a pig, and it's still a pig. I also remember that saying, butter my butt and call me a biscuit. Sometimes the words and images we use cause us not to see things for what they really are. That's what happened between Jesus and the group of tricksters who approached him. The Pharisees and the Herodian coalition approached Jesus with flattery, thinking that if they could stroke his ego, maybe he would not notice they were trying to trap him. They started their questioning with, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with the truth, and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality." That should have raised the red flag. Even in our own personal lives, often when someone starts a conversation with a line of flattery or positive pronouncements, it's time to watch out. It's time to put the shields up because something else might be going on. You may remember an old song. Some of us may remember an old song by a group called Undisputed Truth in 1979. And the song was called Smiling Faces Sometimes. Smiling faces sometimes pretend to be your friend. Smiling faces show no traces of the evil that lurks within. Can you dig it? Smiling faces, sometimes they don't tell the truth. Smiling faces tell lies. One of the people who caused me the most pain in ministry came to me one day and said, "Rev, I don't know why people treat you so badly sometimes when I know you just try to love us, but I want you to know that I will never betray you." Now, at that time, I was just looking for the good in people, so I never saw the dagger coming when she stabbed me in the back a few weeks later. I'm sure most of us have one or two of those stories in our lives. In Jesus's case, he understood that often flattering lips have hostile intent. I heard once, think twice. The impression is not always the intention. Jesus was able to think twice and engage his wisdom because, unlike leadership of our day, Jesus was not overly egoic. He was not just focused on his personal desires. He was not just concerned about what other people thought about him or how things were going for him. Jesus was not that kind of person. He was not flattered by what people said, so he was able to get beyond the flattering words to get to really consider what the Pharisees and the Herodians asked. When they said, "Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" The tax they were referring to was the poll tax or the head tax that Rome had instituted in the year 6 of the Common Era. This was a trick question, however, because if Jesus had said, yes, you should pay the taxes, that would have put him at odds with the nationalists who opposed the tax. And if he said no, then he would have been subject to arrest by the Romans. I think it was Confucius who said, one who never anticipates deceit or expects duplicity, and yet is the first to recognize such things. Is that not a sage indeed? Jesus knew this was a trick, so he responded, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites?" He knew they didn't care about the taxes. He knew that was a lie. Rochelle Goodrich said, lies don't fit snugly into disguises. Eventually the cloak falls off and you're left staring at the naked truth, which is always an uncomfortable situation. Jesus continued, "Show me the coin used for the tax." And they brought him the denarius, and he said to them, "Whose head is on this and whose title?" And they answered, "The emperor's." Then he said to them, "Well, give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." Every time I read this text, I hear a crowd murmur in the background saying, "Ooh, he told you." And he did it without subjecting himself to a backlash from either the nationalists nor from Rome. But when the Herodians and the Pharisees heard this, they were amazed and they left and went away. Jesus used his wisdom to deal with those who opposed him. But the purpose for the author of Matthew, including the story, was not just about whether taxes should be paid, and it was not even a declaration about the separation between church and state. The main point of the text is knowing that you can be a follower of the way of Christ or a member of the love-based realm of God and participate in societies in which we live. To put it more directly, we can follow civic responsibilities, but we do not belong to any other power but to God. That is what gives us peace, even during this political season we're in. We follow our civic responsibilities to vote. We even follow our responsibility to speak up and to speak out for justice. We pay our taxes. We follow the law. The things we all need to remember, however, is we're part of something much greater than this. That's the critical part for us to remember as we are only a couple of weeks away from the general election. We're doing all we can do to ensure that people are engaged in the voting process, whether it be mail-in or face-to-face. We're getting our votes in. But we're up against forces trying to fool us, trying to lie, and trying to steal. We need to be wise enough to see it for what it is and do the best we can. But always remember that no matter how things play out, we are not owned by the rulers of this world. We are citizens of a much greater realm. We are members of the love-based realm of God. And if by some way the tricksters and the oppressors happen to win, we will still have hope for the future because we believe in the power of love to sustain us as we continue to believe that in the end, love will win. Jesus said, "Give to God what is God's." That is our commitment to always let love guide and fuel us in all things. The text calls us to be wise. Wise people generally share an optimism that life's problems can be solved and experience a certain amount of calm when facing difficult decisions. Intelligence may be necessary for wisdom, but it definitely is not sufficient an ability to see the big picture, a sense of proportion, intellectual humility, and considerable introspection also contribute to wisdom's development. People often think wisdom is something you either have or you don't have, but I found that you can cultivate it. I recently read something about wisdom cultivation steps in Psychology Today. It's 8 steps, and the first one is to be honest with yourself, define your emotions, know your values, know what you want. Number 2, be honest with others, be authentic, live and speak your truth. Don't worry about the reaction of other people. Number 3, focus on process rather than outcome. Live mindfully. Focus on the process. Stay present instead of focusing on the outcomes. Number 4, listen to the changes within yourself. Take time to listen to your life. We're always evolving. We're always changing. So take time to see where your own spirit is going. Number 5, learn from your mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes sometimes. No matter how wise and no matter how smart we are, we all make mistakes. But when we do, don't beat yourself up. Learn from mistakes and become more wise because of the mistake. I was reading a book once called Failing Forward, and it is about moving forward when you make a mistake, making a choice to move forward. Number 6, have a sense of humor. That helps you to put things in perspective sometimes. It allows you to let some things roll off your back. So we need to have a sense of humor in life. Number 7, believe you have a contribution to make. That means maintaining a sense of purpose, whether it's teaching, raising a family, making a difference in your community, just choosing to be a good person every day. Believe you have a contribution to make. And finally, be kind to others. See that we're all connected. Mind your thoughts and your words. Make an effort just to do no harm. I believe wisdom was one of Jesus's main superpowers. I believe it's the power that helps all of us negotiate the seasons of our lives, whether we label those seasons a good one or an incredibly challenging one. I recognize that even the bubble over the head that I initially wanted as a superpower isn't worth much if I'm not wise enough to process and to respond. But I'm glad today because we all have the means to grow in wisdom. Like all positive superheroes, we can use our power of wisdom for good and to allow wisdom to direct our individual lives as well as work towards a more loving and more just society and world. So let's embrace wisdom as our superpower and lean on that as we consciously build up this love-based realm of God. We don't belong to the powers of this world. We belong to the power, the loving realm of God. Thanks for listening. Join us next week at 10 a.m. Eastern Time via Zoom. Send me an email to drkathi100@gmail.com. That's drkathi100@gmail.com. And I'll send you the information so you can join by Zoom. Well, have a great week.